Thank you everyone for being here. My name is Stephanie Lane. I'm the Director of Alumni Relations at HSU, and I'm honored to welcome all of you to this special event in honor of Jason Ramos, who is one of our 2020 Distinguished Alumni Award recipients. Throughout this webinar, you can feel free to submit questions either through the chat or through the Q&A. All of those questions I'll be giving to Jason at the end of the presentation, and we'll make sure they all get answered. If you want to use the chat feature, you just need to be sure to select all participants if you want your comment to be seen by everyone. If not, it'll just be seen by myself. Little nuts and bolts there for you. So HSU has been recognizing the achievements of alumni since 1960, when it launched its Who's Who's Award, the Distinguished Alumni Award. Distinguished alumni are individuals that are recognized as leaders in their fields or outstanding contributors to their community, nation, or Humboldt state. And I think we can all agree that Jason fits that category. Each year, our office receives nominations for Distinguished Alumni Awards from alumni, from staff, from faculty, from community members. It's usually over 20 to 30 people each year. And then a committee of past recipients, past alumni recipients, and HSU staff review the nominations and select those who are most deserving of the honor. And as you know, Jason is no exception. Jason serves as a tribal council member for Blue Lake Rancheria and chairman of the Blue Lake Rancheria Gaming Commission. He works to advance tribal strategy, policy, programs, and investments in infrastructure and economic enterprise. His contributions have strengthened tribal sovereignty, improved education, accelerated climate action, and spurred economic development. Jason also serves on the U.S. Department of Energy, Indian Country Energy and Infrastructure Working Group. His work for Blue Lake Rancheria has earned the following recognition: a 2019 Green Power Leadership Award from the Environmental Protection Agency, 2019 Microgrids for Greater Good Award from Microgrid Knowledge, and in 2017, Whole Community Preparedness Award from FEMA. Lastly, in 2015 and 16, the Climate Action Champion from the White House and the U.S. Department of Energy. Jason has a deep commitment to Humboldt State. He serves currently on the President's Native American Advisory Council and Sponsored Program Foundation Board of Directors as the new Masters of Business Education Program Advisory Board. He continues to support kinesiology through the Jason Ramos Endowment for Kinesiology Research, which funds equipment and research for biometrics and human performance labs on campus. Jason, we want to take a second now to present you virtually with your Distinguished Alumni Award plaque, which is beautiful, made out of recycled redwood and done by a local artisan, and we'll be sending that in the mail to you. Normally, I'd be giving you a hug and a handshake right now, but we're just gonna have to suffice for Zoom. But this will be in the mail to you. It's very well deserved. As part of the program, we invite our alumni to come back to campus and speak to current students and community and Forever Humboldt folks about their experience in their career. So Jason, thank you so much for being here today, and the screen and mic are all yours.
So let me start by thanking HSU Advancement President Jackson for choosing me for the Distinguished Alumni Award. It truly is a great honor for me. I've got a long history with Humboldt State. I was a student there in a big portion of the 90s, and then I got a bachelor's degree in science, or a bachelor's degree in kinesiology, with an emphasis in sports medicine there in the late 90s. And later on, I got a master's degree there in kinesiology. I also have a professional doctorate from the Palmer College of Chiropractic Medicine in San Jose. I was a chiropractor before I got moved back and started participating in economic development for my tribe. And my education and experience at HSU was one of those things that really really helped me define my success and really allowed me to take advantage of opportunities as they arose. I also want to thank the College of Professional Studies and Dean Shauna Young for the nomination. I know that the College of Professional Studies is doing great things right now. I know that nursing programs on its way to a comeback. I know that they're over there doing paid internships for students, like 500 of them a year. I worked with a couple of professors on the MBA program. They're taking community input to try to make sure that students get really kind of up-to-date education that really relates to the job market. There's been tremendous outreach there. And so I really can't say anything more than that they're just doing a great job. I know we have some folks from kinesiology that are probably on the line. I want to say hi to those folks, and I hope that my endowment's helping in some small way to enrich the student experience there, because that was my intention. And I know that those folks are doing the very best job they can with those monies. You were pretty much already detailed my history, both here with the tribe and with HSU. Only one other thing I'll add is that recently I became involved with HSU's Native American Studies group on a food sovereignty lab and cultural workshop space. That's a program that was developed by students and by Dr. Cutcha Risling-Baldley over in Native American Studies. And while it's still in its infancy, I'm really excited to be participating with that group. And I think there's going to be really great things to come from the future of that program. A little bit about the Blue Lake Rancheria. It's a tribal government, federally recognized in 1908, terminated in 1958, then we were reinstated in 1983. We're governed by the 5-member Tribal Business Council. That's the council that I sit on now as vice chair. We got about 100 acres of trust land here on the Mad River. We got, we're one of the county's top 10 employers. You know, we get about, well, we did have 400 employees. This whole COVID situation's got our numbers down to more like 350 or 330, but traditionally we're up in the top 10. Kind of germane to this conversation, our tribe also formed a tribal utility and a project management company for low carbon energy projects back in 2013. So where are we at today globally? It's bad news. That's about all you can say about it. Highest ocean temperatures ever recorded, warmest decade on record. There's a threat of increasing ice melt in the Greenland and Antarctic ice sheets, threat of sea level rise, CO2 concentrations higher than they've been in the last 650,000 years at about 414 parts per million. You know, that number keeps changing. When I give discussions or speeches, I always go back and look at that number, and I can track that number as changing just over the last 5 years. If people are interested, a great resource to take a look at those numbers and to take a look at all those metrics is really, well, NOAA is one of them, and that's kind of cited there. But I like to go to NASA, just do a Google search for NASA climate change, and they have got some great materials. We're experiencing more storms in the winter, wildfire season in the summer. It's an extended wildfire season. We've had this persistent drought. We're worried about species die off. We're worried, and you know, everybody's worried that, you know, as the planet warms, we could be ramping up due to the thaw and the permafrost to that may release a lot more greenhouse gas emissions. So not exactly pretty. Same thing on the local level. This is a picture of 2017 where we're just on the right-hand side of the freeway, where there was a fire that threatened our tribe. It was caused by a PG&E transformer, but I mean, it was so dry, it sparked right up. Luckily for us, CAL FIRE was able to get on it and put it out pretty quickly. But even on the coast, we're not immune to those fire risks. Nowadays, we have to deal with nuisance power outages. The wildfires are creating a situation where the particulate in the air is causing people problems. Even I was on the phone yesterday with the Red Cross. We may have to convert our special events center into a Red Cross shelter to try to house some folks from the Hoopa Valley that are dealing with really poor air quality and our sensitive populations. And people can't go outside out over there. And of course, now we deal with these public safety power shutoffs. And this year we've been lucky because they were pretty proactive in kind of making a mini grid in this region, but who knows what that looks like in the future. Going along with wildfires, this is from Monday. I did a screen capture Monday on the CAL FIRE website. Since the beginning of the year, wildfires have burned about 3.1 million acres in California. This year's acres burned is about 26 times greater than the acres burned in 2019 over the same period. And I knew these wildfires this year were bad, but I didn't think they were that bad. The other metric from their website that I thought was interesting to share was that out of the top 20 largest wildfires in California history, seven of those in the top 10 happened since 2017. So we are in this trend where there's increasing wildfire seasons, increasing intensity of wildfires, and who knows what that looks like going forward if that trend continues. Along with the wildfires, those of us that live in Humboldt County know that come the winter time when it rains, now we have to deal with the landslides. So that disrupts local supply chains, gas, diesel, food. We put a bullet in here for sea level rise. Humboldt County is susceptible to sea level rise. We have a nuclear waste repository that's that's really low out in the bay, really low on the bank out in the bay that could be susceptible to sea level rise. So, all in all, not a good outlook. This is part of one of the reasons why my tribe made investments in those resilience projects. Then, of course, the one we all know about and that used to be a kind of our main concern is earthquakes. One of the most geologically active places in the Pacific Rim is here. There's the Cascadia subduction zone offshore. We're always living under threat that might move and cause a tsunami. And if that one moved, and there's a likelihood of a really large, potentially a 9.0 or greater earthquake. So my tribe looked at all these metrics over the course of the last decade. We knew that things were changing. Our leadership made the decision that we were going to try to move towards, number one, being more resilient, and number two, cutting our CO2 emissions. We look at it, and when we build or when we do projects, we really look at lifeline sectors. So we look at energy, we look at water, transportation, communication or IT, and food. And we have our own little food sovereignty program that supplies our Elders Meal Program. That program puts out about 60,000 meals a year for both native and non-native elders in the community. And a lot of the vegetables you find in those we grew ourselves. But we look at these things. We look at these different elements when we plan and when we build, because moving forward, we want to be able to continue our governmental operations and have some continuity of operations as we face these other challenges from climate change. So we talk about both mitigation and adaptation. Mitigation being how do we offset some of our energy use through low carbon sources so that we decrease our carbon footprint. And then of course, adaptation, how do we harden our facilities so we make them so that we can continue to operate our government or continue to operate our businesses through whatever challenges we have, whether it be storms or wildfire or power shutoffs. One thing I'll say here is that while CO2 offset is big for us and continuity of operations is big for us, there are other reasons to get involved in these low carbon alternatives. Currently with one of our projects, and I'll detail it kind of going forward, we save about $200,000 in energy costs and electrical costs per year. So we're able to create a few jobs and all the other benefits like continuity of operations. So there's other reasons to do it. It's not just about one singular reason, but as an overall strategy for us, we see a lot of sense in building these things into the way in which we conduct our business or our government moving forward. So how did we really get to the point in which we considered these things? Well, it started with planning, and it started with setting goals, and it started with strategy. So early on, we were interested in solar. It was still pretty expensive back then. We developed a climate adaptation plan, strategic energy plan, we had an economic development strategy that we kind of refined, and we brought up the Office of Emergency Services for hazard mitigation and emergency plans. So those are the plans we use when we go into the planning phase for a new project, and those kind of guide the direction or guide those components of infrastructure that we know that we're going to spend a little extra money on when we go to develop. This is not it's not a one-man show. This is a team effort across a number of divisions, both the environmental division, our Department of Energy and Technologies, our Office of Emergency Services. All of those divisions within tribal government have a say and have input in project development. So what do our projects look like? So kind of our cornerstone project is our large microgrid. We have 3 different microgrids, 2 of which are operational, and the third is in development. I'll show you where those are located in the next slide, but we should take a second and talk about microgrids. Microgrids are just mini electrical grids that allow you to decouple or island from the electrical provider. So from your regular service provider like PG&E, there's a point of common coupling, the PCC, which allows you to shut off the electricity there and go into an islanding phase where you can rely on your own grid to keep your facilities up. So, you know, before, a couple of years ago, and we were one of the first test cases, in order to do such a thing, you had to go and flip a bunch of switches. You had to have a couple of engineers there, right? And as technology advanced, what we found is that those processes are automated into a large degree. It's companies like Siemens, and actually Schatz Energy Research Center is big on this too, because they really were key in integrating the controls with the software. You no longer have to do that. You can do it from a desktop. And so for us, our microgrids reduce our regular cost of doing business. Of course, we get the CO2 benefits, and we get this continuity of operations, which is important for us. This is where our microgrids are located. So you can see 3 squares there. What you'll see is the main microgrid is up in this location, and it serves, and I have a schematic coming up on this. It serves the tribal government office and the casino hotel and the event center. This is a newly commissioned mini microgrid, we call it. You can see the photovoltaics on top of the gas pump area. It serves the convenience store. It has a little diesel generator here, and it has a big Tesla battery pack right here that supports its operation. And then this dotted line, some of you that might be driving to Blue Lake, you'll see that we're constructing a new building out here. This is the new tribal governmental office, so it's moving from this location to this location. There's also a police department for our cross-deputized Humboldt County officers. And then over in this corner, right in here, there's a newly developed metal building that serves as a tribal fire department. Let's go to the next slide. One thing to mention here is we already have some diesel generators over here, and we have some Tesla batteries on the way. And that's also thanks to some Shots Energy Research Center guys helping us with the application for those. We haven't figured out the solar piece or where that's going to go, but you can bet that we're going to kind of duplicate what we did in these other locations for that one. This is a schematic that kind of shows our main microgrid and where the different components are. So you can see at the top, there's the battery or photovoltaic array. It charges this battery. There's this 1 meg kind of legacy diesel generator here that also supports the grid if we have to. And it supports all of these. We do have a 80 kW generator that supports the tribal governmental office. And so these diesel generators, along with the PV array and the battery storage, is really what keeps the facility operational when we go to decouple from the point of common connection or turn off the PG&E over here on the street. So far, I mean, it's been a pretty robust system. It's been really successful. And we're going to continue to continue to really kind of duplicate, take the lessons learned from those from that version, and kind of move forward to have those microgrids in our other locations. So what does the main microgrid support? It supports those 6 buildings as I showed you. For those out there wondering how big and powerful it is, it's a 420 kilowatt system. It's got a 2 megawatt hour Tesla battery for backup. So depending on load, it'll last a couple of hours, up to 8 hours without any diesel generator startup. That's really that one. The one at this convenience store is even sized a little because it doesn't have such a large load. It actually lasts a little longer. It's got about 60 kilowatts of solar photovoltaics up there, and about 169 kilowatt hours of battery storage, which allows that facility to really run 8, sometimes as far as 12 hours without any diesel helping to support the grid. That one's important for us because during power safety shutoffs, what we found is that we were one of the few gas stations operational. And so during those public safety power shutoffs, what ends up happening is, the regular convenience store becomes like a grocery store for people. It's really the only thing open. People buy milk, people buy bread, people buy ice. I think we sold 2 pallets of ice a day. We had to limit the number of the amount of sales on gas just to make sure we could get a next shipment so that everybody got some gas. We had to put some of the diesel in reserve for emergency responders. Over the course of that shutdown, which was a couple of days, we had over 10,000 visitors. And so you can see this red line, that's the red line of cars that are backed up all the way almost to the highway, or backed up almost to the freeway. So we certainly didn't think, we thought it just might be a little bit, greater business, but this ended up being one of those situations where we learned a lot. We had to reserve some refrigerator space for community members, both from the rancheria and from the larger Blue Lake community, that needed their medications refrigerated. We had to figure out that piece. We had to figure out how logistically we could continue to get gas and diesel, and how we were gonna, it was pretty continuous process. As fast as we could put it in there, it was being used. We had to have a relief center. So we took the Sapphire Palace and converted it into a temporary relief center so people could take their kids down and watch videos, relax, charge their cell phones, used the internet. We had some businesses use the internet there. We had some cots in there, so some people could stay the night if they had to. And we dedicated some hotel rooms to sensitive populations who needed power to be able to support their medical devices. Let me see, did I miss anything in there? No. Another project we have is biodiesel. So this is one of those emerging opportunities. We used to get our fryer grease from our commercial operations, and it was picked up by a third party, and they went and converted it. I think that business had some difficulties in Arcata, so the only people that would come get it were out of Reading. So we proposed a student project over in the environmental engineering department, and we acted like the client, and we got 3 proposals, and this was one of the proposals. So now we take all our fryer grease, and you can see it on the picture on the right. That's somebody from the kitchen who's using the pump they pump out all the grease. It goes into those bins. Those bins are taken over to the biodiesel facility, where we process about 500 gallons of that biodiesel a month. We mix it with regular diesel, and we use it in our public transportation program, our buses. And we're able to offset, we estimate, about 25% of our diesel emissions from using that project. So this is a really small example of kind of an innovative opportunity, and it's one of those things where every little bit counts. And this program's pretty much, by now, it's pretty much paid for itself, and so we're happy with it. We're happy that we went out and took the risk to do it. That, and plus it employs a couple of extra people now. Along with that, this is a much bigger version of that kind of waste stream to energy. This is the Clean World Sacramento Biodigester. A colleague of mine from the Department of Energies and Technologies, Janet Gannon, and I went out and saw this in South Sacramento. I had no idea that this was even possible at the time, but it has been actually in operation since 2012, and they expanded it in 2015. This is a facility where it's a biorefinery, where they can consume up to 100 tons of food waste a day from county operations, which really amounts to about 40,000 tons a year. And the output is a compressed natural gas that they use in the garbage trucks and I think some buses. This is located in the South Sacramento transfer station, and the output from this facility is about 1,500. It offsets about 1,500 what they call DGE, which is diesel gallon equivalents. So instead of burning 1,500 gallons of diesel, this thing will offset 1,500 gallons of diesel per day. Very innovative. And I know that there's a large food waste stream here in Humboldt County. This is one of those projects where I see there could be an opportunity in the future. So talking about opportunities, and I know there's probably some students on the line, what are the opportunities for green jobs or low carbon jobs in the future? This is a couple of infographics I took from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. What it's really showing is that there's a bunch of job growth in these areas that are related to low carbon energy, right? And some of them require a bachelor's degree, some of them require an associate's degree, some of them are entry level. There's a large need in the installation of solar photovoltaics right now. It's been the trend over the last few years, and we expect that trend to continue through 2030 and 2050 actually. We'll talk about that in a minute, but it's a rapid increase. One other item from the Energy Information Administration just an interesting fact is that there's a projection that there'll be a 50% increase in world energy use by 2050. So there's going to be a need, and we'll see this in some slides coming up. But definitely these low carbon solutions are going to be a big portion of that. So here's an interesting question. What's the kind of current job outlook look like right now? This is information from the U.S. Department of Energy's Energy and Employment Report from 2017. It's their latest report. What you see, we'll kind of move from left to right here, is that when you look at power generation and fuels, there's about 1.9 million workers. In 2016, 55% of those, or 1.1 million of those, worked in traditional oil, coal, and gas. And for the first time, you see this, this metric where the number of workers in low carbon emissions is rising. So they count that as 800,000. I'll tell you, that includes nuclear and natural gas, but the good news is that number is on the rise. When you look at transmission and distribution storage, there's less to say, although with the increasing advancement in battery technology, there'll be opportunities in storage. Energy efficiency is interesting. In 2016, we added in this nation about 133,000 jobs just in energy efficiency. And then motor vehicles is one of those opportunities moving forward. There's already, there's a total of 2.4 million workers in that whole auto industry. Currently, there's about 259,000 employees that work in alternative fuels, including natural gas hybrids, plug-in hybrids, all the electric, and fuel cell and hydrogen. There was in 2016, which is the best data they have, there's about 69,000 jobs added in those alternative fuel area, just for that year. The other thing that makes it interesting about that particular aspect of this slide is that, you know, earlier in the week or late last week, there was the Governor Newsom's executive order that all new passenger cars and trucks have to be emissions free by 2035. So we're likely to see a large increase in those numbers for employment in and around alternative energy vehicles or electric vehicles. So this question, or this slide, kind of really asks the question, you know, how do we generate those utility scale? When we generate utility scale power, what's that look like? And what's that look like over the course of the last decade? What's the trend? What you see, if you look both in this column and this column and this column, that in these areas of coal, petroleum, petroleum liquids, petroleum coke as an energy source, from the period of 2010 to 2020, there was about a 45% reduction in using those as a source for utility scale electrical generation. What we did see also, and it's going to continue to be a large component of it, is an increase in natural gas. So not carbon free, probably less carbon, but I think natural gas is one of those things that's here to stay, and the projections kind of show that. The other interesting part of this slide is this renewable sources, excluding hydroelectric and solar. Also, from 2010 to 2019, a huge increase there. And then, of course, the solar, and they don't have good data up until 2014, but the amount of solar that contributed to electrical generation, utility scale, also increased pretty dramatically. I wanted to put this slide in here so that we could kind of all understand where we get where we are generating the electricity in this country by source, like in 2019. So latest and greatest data. We still are producing a big portion of our utility electricity from fossil fuels. Natural gas is a big piece of that, but it's still pretty large. Nuclear remains at about 20%. And here's the renewables, right? About 17.5%. So plenty of room on the upside. This number's grown, particularly in wind over the course of the last decade, really to a large degree. And then, I like to talk a lot about solar and about the benefits of solar, but when you look at it for electrical generation as a source for utilities, it's really down here at about 2%. So that's where we're at today, but what is it going to look like in the future? And that's what this slide is. It's from the US Energy Information Administration. And so these are projections from back here at 2010 all the way to 2050. What you see, kind of coal, 2020, we continue to move down and it flattens out. Nuclear kind of stays, well, it's within 7 points. Natural gas kind of remains flat. And then over the course between now and 2050, we see this rise in renewables. And so what does the rise in renewables look like? It's right here. Their wind is a big portion of it. You can kind of see that wind was really ramped up over the last 5 years, and it's going to ramp up through most of 2020 into 2030. And then there's this huge solar component that becomes available. And there's some reasons in and around that we'll see here on the next slide. This is from the US Department of Energy's Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. It's their Sunshot 2030 program. And what this is really showing is that here's where we were at 2010. The installed price per kilowatt was at 52 cents. And then here we are, 2017 and 2020, the price of that photovoltaic installed has dropped dramatically. And if the trend continues, we're down here at 5 cents at 2030 installed. This is one of those areas that always kept us out of solar installation back in the early in this last decade. So 2010, 2011, 2012 was that the price to install it, you really couldn't, you'd have to wait 30 years, 40 years for it to pay for itself. So that coupled with the fact that back in those days, the quality and efficiency of the solar panels weren't as good as they are now, were really barriers. And what we see now is that a lot of those barriers are getting broken down, that it's getting cheaper to install and that they're more efficient. So it makes more sense economically, and you can bake that into your planning when you build new projects, or if you're a homeowner, right? You can feel good that you can install it and that there's some payback period that makes it worth your while. So one of the questions becomes, well, if solar's, where is solar at now, and where are the jobs in solar? So lucky for us, although we have a lot of bad, we talked about a lot of wildfire and other things about California that weren't so positive. One bright spot is that nationwide, there's about 250,000 solar jobs. 74,000 of those end up in California, pretty progressive state. A lot of solar's being installed, both residentially, some utility scale. So if it's definitely one of those areas where there's opportunity. In order to capture that opportunity, there's some things that we have to do. So we'll talk about those a little bit later, but moving on here. Couple more projections. We'll move to wind really quick, and I'll kind of start to go into some other ideas. So future costs of solar, and we looked at this a little bit in a couple of slides ago. This is also from the Sunshot project. If solar stays at the 6 cents per kilowatt installed figure, we're really here at 2050 at 10%. If we're able to decrease, keep the cost low at 3 cents per kilowatt installed, here's where we're at. And then this is the real unknown, right? Because this is talking about 3 cents per kilowatt installed and also low cost storage. And so that really matters, because one of those problems, and we have some of those Tesla batteries, they're very expensive, right? And so how technology moves forward, the price of those batteries really matters. There's some ideas or new emerging technologies for electrical storage associated to photovoltaics that are out there. What those emerging technologies do in the market are really going to matter about how much solar that we're able to install. And you can see in this kind of best case scenario where we got low cost storage, the percent of electricity from solar, it could be as high as 50%. We get as much as half of our electricity from that in 2050. So wind, we'll move into wind here a little bit, not too much. I'm not as familiar with this subject, and I'll point you in a direction to some folks who are. So at these, and I know these are kind of hard to read, so I'll help you out with these. This is installed wind power capacity in the first quarter of 2020. What we see, total capacity is about 107,000 megawatts. When you look at this California number, it's probably hard to see, but it's 5,942 megawatts potential capacity at the current technology. And I believe this is at 80 meters land-based. So what is the potential? There's this potential for 10,640,000 megawatts to be installed right at 80 meters. So when you look at the state of California under the kind of current view, current scenario, we have 5,000 now, and there's probably a potential for 300,000. That's what this number here, 300,000. So tremendous potential. There's some other potentials we'll talk about on the next slide. Also, so before we talk about the kind of offshore component, I wanted to go over this reference case that was outlined in the Energy Administration's work. And this is the kind of same story that we saw in some of those former slides. As we move to from where we're at here in 2020 to 2050, you see nuclear and coal kind of remain flat. Coal had really come down from 2010, and it's as a source of electrical generation. Natural gas has this spike and it continues, but it kind of flattens out for a little bit, but it's always going to be there. And then there's this huge rise in renewables, right? And as a component of those renewables, here's what it looks like. You know, hydro and geothermal are pretty fixed. You know, it's probably because, you know, how many more dams can you put in? How many more geothermal things can you tap? So they kind of remain at the rates they are. We're currently in this country really seeing an emergence of installation of wind. Believe it or not, California is not leading the nation there. It's Texas. Texas has, I think, 4 or 5 times the amount of installed wind generation than we do here in California right now. But wind's going to be a component, and then you have this solar component. As we kind of flip over to this national, National Renewable Labs report, or Labs metric. This shows offshore wind capacity, or offshore wind speed, not capacity, but wind speed off our coast. And when you look at this, and I know it's hard to read, this red really signifies greater wind speed. It's really 10 meters per second, which is like 23 miles per hour. And you can see from the metric, or you can see from the graph, that the wind speeds right off, that those red areas are right off our coast. So there's this tremendous wind resource that's off our coast that has the potential of being a huge opportunity. At this point, the best place to go to take a look at that or to get information on that, I'm not an expert on that at all, is the Schatz Energy Research Center. They have a 4-part webinar series. I participated, I think, in the first webinar piece. They have part 4 coming up on Monday the 19th. They talk about reflections from the prior webinars and kind of what the next steps may be. They go through a complete analysis of both economic and like physical. They talk about the different scenarios, the sizes, the area where these installations might be, the economics of the projects, the challenges in infrastructure and transmission, you know, the potential of research opportunities for the North Coast and for HSU. They also go through the ecological and kind of geological aspects of the projects, you know, and the concerns there and the potential impacts. So they do a really good job. There's meeting agendas there. You can see their slide deck. They got the video recordings of the different sessions. It's really a great resource if you're interested in offshore wind or the potential of offshore wind as it becomes more and more kind of in the presence or in the face of the community as we move forward. There's going to be a lot of discussion. They really kind of detail 3 different scenarios, like a small installation, a larger installation, and this kind of bigger installation, and what it would take as far as getting that power back on shore, getting that power to the areas in California where it'd be needed. So all in all, that's the place you want to go to learn about wind energy. I know I learned a lot just in my small piece of participation, but I'd encourage folks to go over there. So I kind of laid out an argument for low carbon energy development moving forward, and we know what the need is. We know what the climate issues are. We know that what the challenges are. There's some unique opportunities. There's you know, there's problems to be solved locally that might have unique strategies or solutions. There's solar and there's wind, and we know that there's going to be a future in those things. We know that as far as climate adaptation goes, that we're going to have to just be resilient, right? And so a question that my tribe had to really wrestle with was, you know, how do we plan for this? What are we doing? You know, so the first piece is, what are we doing for adaptation or for planning and resiliency? We have a program called the Resiliency Training and Innovation Center. We call it the ARTIC, RTIC. And what that is, and it's been pretty Office of Emergency Services focused right now. And I'll tell for those students on the phone or on the call, there's a lot of opportunity in emergency services right now, right? That's one of the things that came out of climate change or climate heating of California and the wildfires, is that, you know, there's plenty of jobs out there in those arenas right now, even jobs locally for that. So it's kind of OES focused right now. What we've been doing is emergency preparedness classes, FEMA classes, hazmat classes, a lot of regional planning. We had the earthquake group in here for some planning sessions. We were the first tribe or first rural area to host the National Emergency Management Advanced Academy. So that's how emergency management officials get certified. That's a 5-week program over the course of a year. As a matter of fact, Ryan Derby, who is the OES director for the County of Humboldt, went through that program. We have about 1,200 different certification that we've given out to students in the various FEMA and OES related fields there. So that's the kind of planning for adaptation, but how do we plan for the opportunities that might face us going forward? Like, what are we doing there? So one piece of it is this educational piece. And so, you know, we have HSU, that's a great resource. We've got some of the best graduates in California that come out of our programs across the board. And you don't have to be technology, engineering, or math student to participate in the future of energy development. There's a bunch of folks who do design, there's communication people. You know, almost every major that you see can have some, can be applied to development of those projects, or participate in and around low carbon energy development. So what we've done, we said, look, how do we get students interested in science, technology, engineering, we call it art and math programs. We have a mobile makerspace program called Pathmakers. You might have saw it in some of our social media postings. It's a bus. It's a little bus. Looks like a bread truck that's been wrapped. And we have folks that we've hired that are usually students from HSU that go out to the local K through 12 elementary schools, tribal and other non-tribal, and they do makers projects. So these are hands-on projects where students early in their educational careers can get involved, get their hands on the project. It's something tangible. They get to build something. They get to do an analysis on it. They get to report their findings, right? And they get to be, they get to write or engineer for the afternoon. So it's one of our efforts moving forward to try to get kids interested in science, technology, engineering, math, and how art applies to that too, and design applies to that. It's one of those areas where one of the areas that we understand that if you introduce students early to that there's a larger possibility that they, first they develop a little extra self-efficacy, so self-esteem in those areas, like, hey, look, I can do science. It's interesting and fun, number one, and maybe they decide that because they can do it, that they want to pursue a career in it. We also support a bunch of some undergraduate program work and graduate student work. I could talk about that for a while, but we have to get through this. One thing we do is, of course, I told you about the feasibility studies with internships and our relationship with environmental engineering at Humboldt. We do those projects. We also have summer internships. We have a fellowship for clean energy studies that pays, I think, $15,000 scholarship for graduate students going into environmental engineering or energy policy work there at HSU. We have a Grow with Google digital literacy program to try to get folks interested, both kids and older adults interested with the Google Chromebooks. So they're proficient and aren't afraid of the technology and maybe interested in pursuing work in that field. We've had solar workforce training programs that were directed both at the tribal community and tribal veteran community. That was a Grid Alternatives program where some of our tribal membership and those folks actually did solar installation on residential units here on our lands. That was a DOE funded project. It was really hands-on. We learned a little bit there. So along with education, the other thing we're doing is we're developing what we call the TOMA Resilience Campus. So TOMA in the Wiyot language means sun. This is an EDA funded project. This project is about a $7.8 million project. It'll be a large campus area. It's a place that we plan on having folks develop and launch solutions for clean energy or low carbon energy and community resilience. We'll be tying some of our work in food sovereignty and our own food sovereignty program into that, and food sovereignty seminars. There'll be a large training space. We've toyed with the idea of doing some other solar installation certificate program. There's a business incubator in that space for businesses that'll be participating in resilient, they're resilience focused. We're going to have a Spark Lab or a makerspace program associated with that. There'll be a demonstration kitchen, a retail store, and there'll be some other unique programming. Those are the areas we've identified, but we know with Humboldt County Office of Education and with HSU and with CR, that we have a lot of room in there to develop other unique programming that kind of fits whatever the emerging technology or whatever the opportunity is. So that's going to be that's an exciting project. That right now that project's slated for 2023 completion. I've been working on that project. It'll also be a low carbon energy building with all the with solar, battery. It'll probably be tied into the main microgrid. But there's a lot of I'm really looking forward to that program, I guess you could say, because I think that that's one of those areas where we have synergy with HSU and CR to really do some unique things. So you can be on the lookout for that. I just wanted to kind of end my discussion here today with some of the stakeholders and to say, hey, look, we've built these microgrids and had some other success in biodiesel and other energy projects. You know, our microgrid is our main microgrid is the kind of test case for the county's microgrid over at the airport, which is much larger. But it was kind of proof of concept here. But we didn't do those projects alone. We had other tribal nations. We took input from them. We had public-private partnerships, both with PG&E, of course, our own regional groups. HSU has been fantastic. Shots Energy Research Center. We can't do these projects without those guys. I mean, you got to have the engineering horsepower to even come close to figuring these things out. You could probably do it, but it'd cost you 3 times as much. I mean, you just can't do it. We've also worked with environmental engineering on those projects. I know we have some more capstone projects that the students will be presenting this semester and later in the year. We've done projects with forestry. We've worked well with California Energy Commission. I know that Jana, who's our Director of Energy Technologies, sits on some of their boards. Public Utilities Commission, we've cooperated with the Governor's Office, like I said before, PG&E and the rest, but it takes all of those groups kind of working together to be able to take advantage of those kind of opportunities moving forward. So I know that was a lot. I'm right at my 50-minute mark here. That's pretty much it for my presentation. I'll go ahead and stop sharing, and we'll I think we'll go to the question and answer.
Thank you so much, Jason. That was so much information, and not only an amazing career that you have, but projects that help in our community and connect us to campus. I'm so grateful for all that you do. And so, like Jason mentioned, if anyone there in the audience has any questions, now's the time to plop those into the Q&A or into the chat. We'll be monitoring those. I know I feel like I have so many questions, but I'll narrow them down. I'll get them started, Jason. So I am just really impressed with how much you stay connected with HSU, all those internships, all those departments that you mentioned. Is that something that you've always done through your entire career, stay connected to Humboldt? Is it something that's specific to the projects that you're working on now? And I guess, what does it mean to be connected to your alma mater for you?
Yeah, you know, I always wanted to come back and be connected. For me, I originally came back when there was the Alumni Association, and I did that for a number of years. And we used to do the freshman orientation day, and for me, it was because back when I was a student, I used to see those the Alumni Association in the hallways, and one time during midterms. They gave me a soda and some cookies, and I was really appreciative, right? Because that's what I needed. That's really what I needed at that time, right? You know, you're stressed out, you're doing a thing, and somebody said, hey, you're going to be okay. Have a cookie. And I wanted to come back and do something else for students in that way, right? And then lo and behold, you know, I got involved with advancement, and then it kind of just went from there. And then, of course, we did the project work. And so I was able to meet some of those guys over there. And I've always been intrigued by what they do over there. I didn't mention it in the presentation, but I saw a torrefied pellet project that was in the early stages, where you take this wood waste and they cook it and they make this pellet that's water resistant. I mean, you go over there and look at some of the stuff they're doing over there, and anybody would be intrigued. So when it was time to do these other projects, it was for us, we had we knew them, and they were good guys. They could be trusted, and it wasn't like some engineering firms that necessarily you had to hire. They were in academia, and they were able to do the work, and all around just good guys. So that's how I didn't plan any of this. It just happens. You're out in the community doing things. At that point, I had started an educational foundation for Blue Lake School, me and a couple of other parents, and I was just trying to get involved in my own community.
Well, we are grateful for that commitment to community that you have. Thank you so much for all the opportunity that you've supplied to our students. A question just came in. You're getting lots of great work and good jobs coming in the chat there. Roland Richmond, our president emeritus, just popped a question in there. He says, thank you for an excellent presentation and congrats to you and your tribe for wonderful leadership. Do you think the state and nation will be supportive, or do we need to do a lot more education?
I'll tell you, under the Obama administration, my climate action champion, right? And so we were one of 2 tribes, the rest were cities across the nation. So really on the federal level, it depends on the current administration about kind of like the direction. I'll tell you, the guys in the DOE have always been supportive. The problem is that, the money's few and far between.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the state of California, the state of California is progressive, and they're putting their money where their mouth is. And when it comes to these projects like that biogas project I detailed, that was partly funded by the California Energy Commission. So they're actively out there promoting those projects with seed money and helping. So kind of short answer, it depends federally, like kind of the direction that the administration's going, but on a state level, definitely, we've found nothing but cooperation. And I say that on the energy side because on the gaming side, I've had fights with the state, to be quite honest with you, right? But when we agree that these climate measures and adaptation measures are worth it, they've been great partners.
Great. I was curious. You've had a pretty diverse background of work, right? From all the different projects that you're working on, and starting off in kinesiology and ending up kind of more in a business management position. What are some of the skills that you think across all of those various platforms are transferable? What helped you become the person you are now through what you learned in kinesiology and so forth?
Sure, I can answer that. Let me go back for a minute and thank Dr. Richmond, because he was the president of this university when I first came in advancement. So he's the one that appointed me to advancement. So thanks, Dr. Richmond.
Yeah, good job, Dr. Richmond.
So it doesn't, here's what, when we look at this as employers too. When you get an HSU graduate, you know that they can be critical thinkers, right? So if you're a critical thinker, it doesn't matter what major you're in, right? If you're a critical thinker and you're able to solve problems, and you're able to work in groups, and you're able to communicate, those are all the kind of soft skills you need to be successful, right? And we teach that as a core at HSU, right? And so when it comes to this, when it comes to some of these projects, I was a kinesiology major in the sports medicine option back then, and I had to take chemistry and physics, right? I took 2.5 years of chemistry, which, by the way, the full year of organic chemistry I took at HSU was the hardest class I ever took, period, right? It was difficult. I took physics there. I took biology there. So it's not like when I'm sitting in a room with engineers that they're completely speaking Greek to me. I'm able to, rely on my history there. And kinesiology majors take a bunch of physiology. So, they understand, there's some science understanding there. So those things, those skills that I learned at HSU, although they're not directly in my major, right, or my postgraduate work, they're transferable. And as long as you can have critically think, reason your way through arguments, and be able to work with others, those are the things that will get you through. And I'm confident that all our graduates at HSU do that, have that ability.
Great, thank you. I think that that's always something for us all to remember. Sometimes what we go to school isn't what we end up in, but those skills that we learn can go across a multitude of things. So we have a question in the Q&A from Laura Fisher, your friend from the Advancement Board. I think you guys were both on the Advancement Board at the same time. She says, Jason, that was a very informative presentation. I hope you're wrong about natural gas being here to stay. Are you considering a biomass project for your tribe?
We looked at one, and we actually initially had one that we had spec'd out, and we're trying to get to work. And it was really, you could think of it as a sawdust, a hydrogen gas technology that went to a fuel cell, but really technical, a lot of challenges. Actually getting the biomass, right, and having it delivered, right, there's a cost associated with that. I think the ideas that were kind of coming out of the SHOTS lab, or some of their partners, or some of the looks that they were originally taking a look at, where you would take a unit and it would go out into the woods, right, and it would grind fallen trees, brush, and then produce those pellets, torrefied pellets. I think that's attractive. I'm not so sure I want to truck stuff here. I just don't see it as being economically viable. And then there's this other particulate matter. We live in Blue Lake. The old power plant that we have here has been plagued with particulate issues coming from the stack. And they've tried hard to try to fix that, but it doesn't seem to really work. So for my tribe, it's probably just not a good fit. If I was part of the timber company, or if I was a large landowner, or I had a contract with the federal government for that, and we could make it economically viable, maybe. But I just don't see us doing it. But I think biomass is out there, and I think it was listed on that list. I just didn't pay much attention to it, but. I think, if I'm going to answer that, it's probably just not for us.
Yeah. You can't conquer everything. There's another question that's come in the chat. Why was it important to Blue Lake Rancheria to develop green energy?
Well, that goes back to some of our core beliefs in and around our own responsibilities. And so, when you talk to tribes, and I'm not going to generalize for other tribes, I can only really talk for mine, but there's this belief that we're stewards of our own lands. And when you see the amount of climate change that's happening in the world, it's just like, if you can do something about it, you try to do something about it. So that's part of it, that we believe we're stewards of our own lands. The second part, it ends up being like, you can do something innovative, and you can make it so that you have, that you're more resilient, and you have some continuation of operation. And then the third piece is you save money. So it's like triple benefit, and plus you get to employ more people. So the benefits, that slide that said stack benefits, that's really it. You get to do all those things. And now with the price of solar, and hopefully the price of battery storage goes down, it's becoming more and more readily available to everybody. So yeah, that's really how I'd answer that.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. Looks like Justice Ortega is on the line, the I think department chair for kinesiology, rec, and now nursing as well. He says, great presentation. I really appreciate your work with renewable energy. I know the Rancheria has supported various wellness related projects in the past. Does Blue Lake Rancheria currently offer any grants related to elder health? He'd love to partner with you to support fall prevention and diabetes/obesity intervention for tribal and other North Coast elders. Possible new project.
Yeah, and Justice and I have known each other for a long time. We were actually undergraduates together here at HSU.
Oh.
Yeah. So, and I know when I came back for my master's work, he's a great dedicated professor over there and one of the smartest guys I know. Short answer is I haven't been involved in that since I did my master's work, and I know that Justice and we crossed emails at one point and we just never really connected. I'm interested in getting back into that arena. We do care about elders, and we do, and I'd like to get re-involved in those, better bones, better balance, those sorts of programs. That's definitely something as we and we could probably start planning now, that we'd be willing to participate in some way, Justice. I think that we could start talking about it now, and hopefully at some point when this COVID crisis clears, we might be able to launch something. So I'm interested still. I know that we didn't get a full connection before through email, but I'm willing to circle back and we can have a serious discussion about that and what it might look like.
Great. Oh, look at that. That's the community and alum spirit I like. One last question here in the Q&A. Laura Fisher asked too, tell us more about your leadership style and how it's developed and changed over time.
It's changed dramatically. I'll tell you that straight away. I learned it. You're never ready for that. So I've been like you said in the beginning, the chair of the Gaming Commission for a long time, for 20 years.
Wow.
The first 5 years, I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, that's just kind of plain and simple. You just try to make your way through it. Mm-hmm. Then after time, I've always been a person that believes in, kind of more of an open and communication method, where we all get in a room and listen. It's not just top down, right? We all get in a room and voice our concerns, because sometimes those individuals, my managers have, great points that I haven't even thought of. Sometimes I know things that they might not be considering in the conversation. So where I started and where I ended up now is completely different, right? So it's developed over time. Sometimes you develop because things work for you. Sometimes you develop because you didn't do so good. You got to have a little failure here and there in some arenas to be able to kind of work your way through it. But that's one of those things, is try to treat people the right way, and try to listen. And we work our way through there. And all the departments that are in the Rancheria now, and I'm the acting tribal administrator right now because our tribal administrator's out. They work on their own. I mean, we end up promoting people that are really self-starters, mm-hmm. and they're there to facilitate other people's success, right? And that's kind of our message, that as an organization, just don't look at your own piece, right? Because you can try to advance your own piece to the detriment of others, or you can try to advance the organization. And organizationally, if you're helping everybody else, then when you need help, someone's going to be around there, right? So I like that. I like those ideas better. And if we're all working towards a common goal, we try to understand, sometimes people are having difficulties and we need to help them out. And hopefully we can rally around each other and do that.
Yeah. Thank you. There's a comment here in the chat from Dew that says, anyone who does well in organic chemistry can do anything. And I think you're proving that. And Right before we wrap up here, Jason, I just want to ask you, I always love asking this, especially distinguished alumni who have such a connection back to campus. What is one of your favorite memories from your time at HSU as a student?
I got a lot of them. I got a lot of them. I remember, I always had, you always get special feelings when either midterms are over or finals are over and you're walking off, right? And you look back, the sun's coming down and you see, Founders Hall, that sort of thing. But then the next day you're lost. You're like, oh geez, what am I doing now? Because you're so used to being under the gun for exams. So I always felt a little lost the day or two after, but the day right of it, when you finish those, it's a great feeling. Great feeling of accomplishment, great feeling that you put the work in. So I got a lot of those, when we had football, I used to attend those games. I always loved that. I did that as a child. So it's something my family shared. And so I've got a lot of those memories actually. Yeah.
Great. Very good. Well, you and I are similar. I grew up in this community as well. So I have lots of memories from my childhood moving forward. And so we are just so thrilled to have you join the ranks of distinguished alumni and are so grateful for all that you do for the university and the students. And I can't wait to have some bragging points with you and Justice in your new project. But thank you so much for your time today. And thank you to everyone who joined in. And remember that we are able to honor distinguished alumni like Jason because members of the community and alumni nominate each other. So I always like to give a little plug and a little encouragement that if you know another alum for HSU who is doing amazing work like Jason is doing, please feel free to nominate that person. We make announcements in the early spring and close nominations in January for distinguished alumni. So you can hop on our website now and download that recommendation form. But Jason, we are so grateful for you and our community and for being an alum. And thank you so, so much. We'll stay on for just a minute, just as everyone exits. But congratulations to you on your award.
Great, thank you. And thanks for everybody who attended. And this truly is a great honor for me, so thank you.
Yeah.